Thank you very much, Speaker. And I have a few things to say on the subject of this resolution, because I do believe that the member from Bramalea-Gore-Malton has taken with a great degree of passion the concept of addressing a problem for the province of Ontario and for people, all of those of us who drive cars and have to buy automobile insurance. I think at that point we have to part company. My auto insurance rates have been just as ridiculous, if not more so than many. I, at a given point, was paying $300, $400 a month, and it's been as high as $600 a month. Part of that was due to the 4 tickets I had simultaneously, but when they all fell off my record, I was still at $300 a month, and I had to go insurance shopping in the province of Ontario, and finally found one that was reasonable. And so to display the array of rates, or to shine some light on it here in debate, I'm now paying $140 a month on the same car. So, as the saying goes, go figure. The point, however, is not whether or not there's passion on the part of my friend from Bramalea-Gore-Malton. The question is how we're going to deal with it. His resolution says, in the opinion of the House, the Legislative Assembly of Ontario calls upon the Wynne government to direct FSCO to gradually reduce average industry-wide private passenger auto insurance premiums by 15%. That's all it says. So the first question I had when I read that is, why 15%? Why not 2% or 7% or 22% or who the heck knows what? What is the rationale for 15%? I'm going to get to that in a minute. But I do want to quote from a news report that crossed my desk today. I believe that I'm quoting from CP24. And it goes like this. Members of Ontario's Liberal government will vote for an NDP motion calling for a 15% cut in auto insurance premiums, but don't bank on big savings just yet. The motion, which is not binding on the government, calls on the Liberals to mandate a gradual industry-wide reduction of 15% in auto insurance rates. The Liberals have maintained the best way to reduce insurance premiums is to combat fraud, the same position taken by the Insurance Bureau of Canada. The move by the Liberals to vote for the motion shows the minority government is willing to meet demands the NDP has made to support the upcoming budget and avoid triggering a provincial election. So now we have isolated what we're looking at here and why we're looking at it, and we have to understand, and specifically for people who are looking in on us today, that this is not a binding motion. So regardless of who votes for this motion, it doesn't have to have any teeth in it ultimately. Anyway, the concept of putting a motion like this forward and calling for a 15% particularly arbitrary figure makes about as much sense as milking a bull. Okay? 15% is an arbitrary number that the NDP has drawn out of a hat. And my guess, I tried to guess as to why 15%. Why 15%? And I think it's because the NDP, or as we here like to call them, the socialist arm of the Liberal Party of Ontario, picked on 15%, is because they think that's what the profit margins are. And they don't like the idea of profit. So that's the nearest I can come. But in a serious vein, Speaker, I have to say that what we're looking for here is a multi-pronged solution to a serious and complex problem that besets all Ontarians who drive automobiles and or pay for automobile insurance. And to the point made by the leader of the third party, the concept of having 400,000 people in the province of Ontario driving around without insurance is not new. It's been like that for at least 10 years that I am well aware of, inside and out of my political life. In fact, there are somewhere in the same vicinity of that number of people driving around without licenses in the province of Ontario, another entirely different problem. But being against this isn't even partisan. It's just common sense. Even the industry is against political pandering and picking a number out of a hat and saying that's what we want. And by the way, it's a bargaining chip for a budget, says it all. The spokesperson for the Insurance Bureau of Canada is Pete Karageorgios, and he said, and I'm quoting, "Don't think she," referring to the leader of the third party, "has thought it through." IBC issued a statement that called it a Band-Aid solution that may score political points, but for the long term, all stakeholders need to continue to push for needed reforms and fight fraud. We were, as a party, willing participants last summer in a task force under the Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Affairs that isolated fraud as the biggest problem in the insurance industry, that causes this rate problem, and there is no question that auto insurance rates in Ontario are high. But premiums in the province of Ontario, I might say, have increased by 65% in the last 10 years. What's significant about the last 10 years? It's been under the tutelage of the government of the Liberal Party. And I don't know anyone in this province who has had salary increases, sustained that kind of an increase, 65%. So instead of a drop in the ocean, the Ontario PC Party wants to target the root cause of the issue. And that is, and I think all parties agree, auto insurance fraud. It costs the system $1.6 billion annually. If we had $1.6 billion back, I would suggest to you that insurance rates would drop, and more than just marginally. The McGuinty-Wynne Liberals have been promising a reduction for almost 10 years. They promised a 10% reduction within 90 days of winning the election in 2003. And you folks who came in here in 2003 know that very well. Instead, there was an 11% increase that year. That's what you can expect from the Liberal Party. If the Liberal government really wanted to reduce auto insurance rates, they would have done it already. As a matter of fact, there's a commercial on the radio for a weight loss guy named Harvey Brooker, who I happen to know. And his slogan is, if you could have done it yourself, you would have done it already. Okay? Well, if you could have done it yourself, you would have done it already. You made that promise. The numbers the NDP are giving are not even an accurate reflection of reality. When the NDP did their math, and if you can call it math, the IBC said the NDP did not consider expenses that insurance companies have just their claim payouts. The NDP actually doesn't have a lot of track record when it comes to arithmetic. At a time when Ontario needs to create jobs, this ill-conceived attempt at policy would result in layoffs in an industry that employs 77,000 Ontarians. Governments should not be dictating how the private sector is going to be run. We're on record on a number of files on this. The proposal is coming from the same party that put forward a private member's bill last year that would have seen convicted drunk drivers paying less for automobile insurance. And frankly, the last place that we should be taking direction on this is from the NDP. These are the folks who essentially are having rings installed in their noses that are being pulled by the Liberal Party right now. 15% across the board also means that bad drivers will pay less. So is that really what you want? Is that what you want, for bad drivers to pay less? The Anti-Fraud Task Force was created in 2011 to produce regulatory change, but it hasn't gone far enough, and the findings have yet to be touched. There's been a lot of talk about the good work that it did, but we haven't seen any action, and that work was done about 8 months ago. Right now, as my colleague has said, there are 17,000 claims backlogged in dispute resolution, and it takes an average of 414 days to complete a mediation case. In addition to looking at ways of eradicating fraud in the system, the Ontario PC Party wants to increase accountability, reform the dispute resolution process so people don't have to wait a year and a half, reduce bureaucracy to create competition, which means lower premiums for all Ontarians. I can tell you something. I have had the insurance people in my office. There are precious few American companies that are up here in Ontario selling insurance, and the reason is, in their words, it's a dog's breakfast for automobile insurance. Have you ever heard of a field of discipline or a field of endeavor where Americans, the world's greatest marketers, arguably, would not participate because they feel that the playing field is so ridiculously out of kilter they don't want to be there? Ontario cannot afford populist Band-Aid solutions, especially from a party that really can't count. So if you believe that this 15% cut is good policy, I've got some swampland in Florida. Come and see me after this debate. Thank you, Speaker.